Long before Rome became the most famous and powerful city in ancient Europe, there was another civilization in Italy, known as the Etruscans. They lived in Italy 500 years before Rome's rise and referred to themselves as Rassana. It's widely recognized in Europe that the Romans were influenced by the Etruscans. But what's not often discussed is that the Etruscans were likely of African origin, with a culture deeply rooted in Africa. Present-day Italy was once home to the Etruscans, an influential ancient civilization that thrived from the 8th century BC. Their territory, known as Etruria, spanned from the southwest of the Italian peninsula up to the north, including what is now the island of Corsica, a French territory. The heartland of Etruscan civilization was marked by 12 major cities, highlighting Rome's origins as a relatively minor city within the Etruscan sphere. Until the lions have their own historians, the tales of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. The Greeks referred to the Etruscans as Tyrrhenians or Tyrrhenians, naming their territory Tyrrhenia, which is the etymological root of the Tyrrhenian Sea, the body of water adjacent to their lands. The Romans, on the other hand, called them Tusci or Etrusci, from which the name Etruscans is derived. The term Tusci is also the basis for the name Tuscany, a region in present-day Italy that was once the cradle of Etruscan civilization. This historical connection underlines the significant legacy of the Etruscans in shaping the cultural and geographical landscape of Italy. Ancient European historians have long debated the origins of the Etruscans, an early civilization in Italy. Some, like the famous historian Herodotus, believed the Etruscans came from Lydia, in what is now Turkey, around the time of the legendary Battle of Troy in the 12th century BC. Another historian, Dionysius of Halicarnassus, argued that the Etruscans originally came from Greece, known then as Pelasgians, before moving to Italy. These accounts suggest that the Etruscans, once part of the early Greek inhabitants known as Pelasgians, settled in Italy and established what would be known as the Etruscan civilization. According to these stories, after being displaced by the Greeks, they migrated, eventually settling in Italy and founding the city of Crotona, among other places, giving rise to the area known as Tyrrhenia. Interestingly, Greece and Turkey, like the entire Mediterranean region, were originally inhabited by people of African descent before the arrival of populations from the north. This is supported by references to the Pelasgians, the ancestors of the Etruscans, as being of African origin, with the Greek author Asios of Samos suggesting that the Pelasgians, and by extension the Etruscans, were black. If you're curious about the evidence, consider examining this: a vase from the 4th century BC, housed in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which shows a young Etruscan man. According to the museum's curators, the shiny black coating on the vase represents the skin color of a young black person. The lips and curly hair further affirm his racial identity. Aha! Finally, someone is speaking the truth. Or are they? Well, they declare that the vase was used to hold wine during dinner parties and social gatherings, and claim that the images of black Africans appearing on this pottery and other famous artifacts from the early classical period of Greece are a bit of a mystery. Well, why are we not surprised? Interestingly, the so-called scholar named Sir John Beazley labeled it as part of a greater collection of similar artifacts, collectively known as the Negro Boy Group. Finally, the curators threw dust into our eyes by extending a courtesy. These were their words. Earlier interpretations of the heads singularly as servants or enslaved people likely reflect views through a modern lens. We can say with confidence that blacks were by no means enslaved people in ancient Greece. Indeed, the Greeks revered blacks and traveled to Africa to acquire knowledge. As black scholars, our attempts to challenge these blatant non-academic declarations by Europeans are always met with the so-called Afrocentric tag. Well, let us continue. For those interested in the presence of Africans in ancient Greece, sculptures from the 5th through 3rd century BC offer compelling evidence. These artworks, housed in the Walters Art Museum and the Metropolitan Museum of Art, show that people of African descent were present and significant in number during ancient times, even after the arrival of European groups. The influence of African presence in ancient Greece extended even into the realm of religion, as demonstrated by certain depictions of Zeus, the supreme god of the Greeks. An illustration from the 6th century BC, preserved in the British Museum, shows Zeus with features and skin color that suggest African descent. This choice of representation was deliberate, indicating a recognition and incorporation of African figures within Greek mythology and society. This is particularly notable considering that artists of the time had the means to depict different skin tones, highlighting the intentional portrayal of Zeus in this manner. Some of the Pelasgians were displaced due to invasions by tribes from northern Europe over 3,000 years ago. These invasions reached as far south as Greece, leading to the decline of the Minoan civilization, which had African roots. As a result, the Pelasgians migrated to Italy, bringing with them their cultural and societal influences. This movement marked a significant shift in the cultural landscape of the ancient Mediterranean world. In 2013, a study published in the journal PLOS One by Silvia Garotto and her team provided new insights into the origins of the Etruscans, who were early inhabitants of what is now Tuscany, Italy. This research found that the Etruscans likely migrated from what is now Turkey about 7,600 years ago, challenging the ancient historian Herodotus's account that they moved during the time of the Battle of Troy, around 3,200 years ago. This period of migration is significant because it predates the widespread presence of white populations in that region of the world, suggesting that the Etruscans and the region of Turkey from which they migrated were predominantly populated by people of African descent at that time. The study also opens up discussions about the connections between the Etruscans and other ancient civilizations, such as the Pelasgians, ancient Egyptians, and modern-day Africans. Moreover, the unique language of the Etruscans, which doesn't fit into the Indo-European language family and remains a puzzle for Western linguists, might find new avenues of exploration through comparisons with African languages. This research paints a picture of the Etruscans as a civilization with deep roots in African heritage, who moved through Asia and Greece before settling in Italy, where they became known as precursors to the Roman civilization. In 1978, Italian anthropologist Mario Capieri analyzed Etruscan skulls and noted specific physical traits in his findings, suggesting a mix of features within the Etruscan population. His analysis raised questions about the ethnic composition of the Etruscans, hinting at a significant African presence. This interpretation is supported by other studies over the years. Let's examine the following depictions of Etruscans. The Etruscan religion shared similarities with African spiritual beliefs, focusing on a divine energy that governs the world through both masculine and feminine forms. This energy allowed for communication between humans and the divine. The Etruscans honored their ancestors by burying them in richly adorned sarcophagi within mural-decorated burial chambers, reflecting a belief in the continuation of life after death through a divine energy. This concept aligns with African spirituality, which also embraces a single, dualistic God and the idea that humans possess a divine energy that persists after death. This is seen in practices among the Bassa of Cameroon and in Madagascar, where the deceased were buried with personal belongings for use in the afterlife. Etruscan funerary practices, such as the use of sarcophagi and burial chambers, show Egyptian influences and differ markedly from the cremation traditions more common in European cultures. According to Cheikh Anta Diop in Nations Nègres et Culture, the Etruscans played a pivotal role in introducing the elements of Egyptian civilization, such as agriculture, arts, religion, and divination, to the Italian peninsula, effectively laying the foundations for Italy's culture. The Etruscans, who are thought to have origins linked to Greece, brought with them the Greek writing system and adapted it in Italy. This script itself traces back to Egyptian influences, introduced to Europe by the Phoenicians. The Etruscan alphabet, which included 26 letters similar to the modern Latin script, incorporated letters like A, B, C, I, M, N, O, S, and T, which remain unchanged today. This showcases the Etruscans' significant contribution to the cultural and linguistic development of Italy. In ancient Italy, the Etruscans, known for their advanced civilization, came into contact with northern warrior tribes who were initially less civilized and had a patriarchal society. These northern tribes, over time, learned from the Etruscans and eventually overpowered them. By 509 BC, they had ended the Etruscan monarchy in Rome and established a republic. Rome began to rise as a power around 300 BC, and by 200 BC, Etruscan influence had declined significantly, leading to the disappearance of their language. Sheikh Anta Diop notes in Nations Nègres et Culture that the Romans absorbed much of the Etruscan civilization, but rejected elements that conflicted with their patriarchal values, including the matriarchal aspects of Etruscan society. This led to the Roman civilization being shaped significantly by Etruscan contributions, albeit modified by Roman patriarchal norms. The Romans also adopted and adapted many Etruscan innovations, such as writing, architecture, and cultural practices, while the Roman pantheon of gods mirrored the Greek and, by extension, the Egyptian deities. The Romans were influenced by Egyptian culture in several ways, including the adoption of a 365-day calendar and the cult of Isis, which would later influence Christian traditions. This narrative challenges simplistic views of cultural and racial purity, illustrating the complex intermingling of cultures in the Mediterranean. The legacy of ancient Rome, deeply intertwined with the contributions of African and Etruscan civilizations. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. I would like to say a special thank you to all of our subscribers, Nubian storytellers. Congratulations to those recently gifted a free subscription. I have started a Discord server to enable effective communication. Let me know what you think of it. Be proud of your African heritage. We have a great past and an even greater future. See you soon.